Swati here from Manufacturing Today. Most of you know me. I'm the Deputy Editor of Manufacturing Today, and I will be hosting the show for today. We have some eminent panelists with us, and we'll give audience to join in a minute or so. Let me begin by the time the rest of them join. Firstly, thank you everyone, including panelists and the audience, to join in today. This has been a really, overwhelming response that, a topic like supply chain management would get for manufacturing today. Before we begin, I have a couple of instructions for everyone. Firstly, audience, let us know through chat that audio and video is clear for you. In case of any technical issues that you have, please post it through chat so that our technical team can come back to you. If you have questions for audience, please type it in the Q&A section so that, whatever questions we can ask to the panelists and get it answered for you. Okay. Apart from that, we will be having a couple of polls in between. Audience can participate in that poll and register their opinions. Okay, with that, I think we are ready to go. Okay, so let's start. Hafiz, would you like to start off with the introduction of manufacturing today?
Of course. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of ITP Media and Manufacturing Today, I welcome all my panelists, all my attendees. ITP was founded in 1987 in United Kingdom. Later, we relocated to Dubai. That's our head office in Dubai. ITP Media Group, globally, we publish more than 100 brands, which has from B2B to B2C sectors. Some of the global brands that we publish, you can have a look at it. We presence across industry. You name the industry, we are there with the brand, a solution to you. Yeah. In India, we completed 10 years, and some of the brands that we publish in India are Hotelier India, Commercial Design, Construction Week, Manufacturing Today, of course, Architect and Interior, Healthcare Radius, and Digital Studios. Manufacturing Today, we clearly distinguish, itself with the industry. We have a very focused editorial content that facilitates decision makers to know what's happening in the industry and to be updated and learn from peer to peer. Over to you, Swati.
Thank you, Hafiz. Now let's start with introduction of our panelists. We have Mr. Senthil Kumar KK, who is the National Manager, Supply Chain Transformation at Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages. We have Professor Jayaraman, who is the Operations and Supply Chain Management at Bhavan's SP Jain Institute of Management and Research. Also, we have Mr. Milan Thakkar, who is the CEO of Wallplast India, and Mr. Vipul Agarwal, who is the FFP Supply Chain Head at Havells India. So, welcome to you, all of the panelists. Thank you for joining in.
Thanks, Swati.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Swati.
Okay. And to start with, I would like to ask these questions to everybody, but if I start with Mr. Agarwal, that how has disruption been affecting your company, your operations, and how are you dealing with it?
Yeah, so I'll come to this. So if you see over the years, what has happened, especially last couple of years, was very high on disruptions. Right now, let's say starts from floods in Kerala, and then how do we see disruption? There are foreseen events, and then there are unforeseen events, or there's a black swan event like this pandemic. So what we have tried to do over a period of time, we have tried to made a disruption calendars at Havells. So we have a disruption calendar in place where we try to capture one foreseen events, like general election is also a foreseen event, that we know the elections are going to come and it can bring a disruption to the supply chain. And similarly many more, be it in terms of let's say when the budget comes in and there is a duty structure change, it brings a disruption in terms of decision making, whether you have to want to make in India or you want to, let's say, procure from outside. Some kind of these decisions happens or disruption happens. So those kind of disruptions actually has helped us over a period of time by making that calendar that there are actions in place, so preemptive actions which were in place, so that when this time the pandemic or this COVID-19 happened, we were, I'll say, in some way prepared 50, 60%, 70% for, in terms of our mindset. I'll say may not be in terms of all the actions, but in India, like, as you travel on the road, there are so many roadblocks and or there are speed breakers. So we are used to these kind of speed breakers in our basic mindset somewhere. So that how do we, when it comes to us, how do we take it on? Let's say I give you an example. We had Article 370, right? Which has hit us Jammu and Kashmir for almost 45 days. Similar kind of lockdown which has happened in Jammu and Kashmir, rather that may be even worse than what it is today. So we have learned from them because we have a disruption calendar in place. We know what kind of actions we have taken when Article 370 happened in Jammu and Kashmir, how we have managed the supply chain at that point in time. So that may give you a small clue, but it prepares you for a bigger, so let's say definitely God has bigger plans. That's why we had this at this point in time. But somewhere we were able to do some level of reaction rather than going into a totally shock. And we are ready, okay, that this is the way we can do things. So that's what I'll start with. Maybe more people can come in and then I can add more to it.
Right. Mr. Senthil, how about you? How do you manage?
Yep. Like Vipul was saying, so disruptions are actually, every disruption helps us become more matured, become more evolved, and each disruption teaches us something. If you see in the recent disruption, every business, what sort of business, whatever business they may be in, they got impacted. And we saw new age partnership coming up between non-competing partners, like the FMCGs partnering with Ubers and Olas and Swiggies to deliver food. So things are changing, and this is opening up new avenues which we never explored or we wouldn't have even thought of exploring. So I think every disruption, in a way, yes, it is having an impact for us on a short term, but it makes us evolve better, become more matured, and manage more such situations. Being an organization which is 134-year-old, I think our organization would have faced several disruptions, and as an organization, we have tried and tested every method and model. So we are, in a way, I should say, like, prepared to manage most of it. But when a complete lockdown that like this happens, I think it is something beyond anybody's control.
Absolutely.
But I say, in a way, like, disruption helps us, as Vipul was mentioning, as a speed breaker for us to check where we are progressing, make ourselves more connected to the nature, connected to the evolvement that is happening, and make ourselves more robust enough and agile to meet changing scenarios.
Correct. Mr. Thakkar, I would like to come to you. How do you look at this pandemic and the disruption that it has created?
Swati, for us, it's honestly an eye-opener. We are a young organization, and in the MSME space, we've only spent 15 years with all the stalwarts here in the panel. So we are a young, humble organization. So for us, it's an opportunity, an eye-opener for us to transition to a new era. Internally, I was discussing with my founders and my managing director yesterday that it's a great opportunity to look at transitioning to becoming a technology-enabled enterprise. In manufacturing, it is, not so easy to integrate technology across, your horizontal and vertical. However, having said that, we were discussing how we integrate plants, how we automate our plants, how we look at enabling them with AI technology, how we look at bots, how we look at talking to each other, plants talking to each other, looking at automation, which, looks at not only, but, the human intervention to a particular level, but also optimizes the outcome of what we have. On the inventory side, I must say that since we are more people dependent, here is, and as we have the huddle in place, it's more of a huddle where we are looking at automizing a lot of avenues. and we're already working on it, our plan B, to get ready for any disruption in the near future which happens. So I think that's where we are, Swati. That's where we are.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thakkar. Professor Jayaraman, I would like to come to you now. Since you've been talking to the industry at large, how do you look at this particular disruption affecting the industry?
Yeah. Okay. First, before I go to other industries, let us look at the education industry. Education is a very big industry today, especially the B schools, for example. And how did we respond? We are a big B school. We have a big strength of various programs. So first thing that we learned was that we need to plan. Of course, we keep telling our students planning is very important. How did we do it? I think that if being dispassionate, I would say that we planned very well because we have an open culture. We get a lot of views and criticisms and so on from various people. And we almost react quite speedily. So we are very nimble, very fast. And for example, what problems did COVID create for education? First, students could not come to class. Classes were gone. Whereas we had offline classes, they were all gone. They had to be replaced by online classes. Now, what did we do? The medium. Choosing the medium was very important for us. And we immediately looked at 4 or 5 different media like Zoom and WebEx and so on. And we finalized our medium. Second, we fixed our delivery schedules and we created meeting rooms and various other types of mechanisms by which we completely reoriented our primary purpose. Our primary job is to deliver knowledge. On that, we made sure that while we will not be able to do the same way in classes, but we are now delivering almost 80 to 90% of it. So that is from the education sector. From the other industry point of view, what we see from the educational, from B school perspective, we find that we do have a lot of economics professors who can tell us, who keep telling us that what are all the various difficulties in terms of the money part of how the government is finding itself in big difficulties. That is known to us. And one area which is supply chain. I'm delighted that the Prime Minister in his speech used the word supply chain so many times. And I've not heard the word being used so often and in such high offices.
Yeah.
I was quite delighted, and I thought that he had a message which I think is very important. This is a time to discover ourselves, which I think that in my view, we have not been doing it enough. So this is what I will open up with, and maybe I will add on later also.
Okay, and so coming back to Mr. Senthil, do you think localization is the way forward in this whole structure or in this whole situation?
Before answering this as a professional, I would answer this as an patriotic Indian nation. So I always had this urge in me, like why we are still dependent on global products. In fact, most of our dependency is with our neighbors. And why is it so? Why can't we have our own product which becomes a global brand? So that was always my, I would say, I was having that urge within me. And I think though we are looking at it at a very delayed space, I think it's never late. So we should start putting more efforts in making local products, depending on local producers for everything that we do. That way, we as a country has got every resource that is available, and both with respect to the resources that is needed for manufacturing, plus resources that is needed for people who manage that manufacturing. So I think worldwide, Indians has a highest IQ level, and we are getting employed everywhere across the world, and tapping that resource with the available natural resource which is already abundant within India. I think we have a way to go, and I think this is just a seed. And with good amount of strategical approach and long-term vision on bringing in some sort of Silicon Valley of within India, I think this should be a way forward for us to get to the next big level.
Okay, Mr. Agarwal, what is your perspective on this? How do you look at localization? Localization will prevail in the time.
I think the immediate action will be, as Senthil said, as a nation, let's say nationalist also would like to be go for, let's say, go local and let's say more vocal about it. And from, let's say, as a pure business cost perspective also, you would like to be in a way where you are saying it makes sense to do local until unless, let's say, the import is much cheaper or whatever. So those games, let's say immediate reaction, yes, everybody would like to go local, but over a period of time, we have to see, because any business will run on a profit and loss, and how do you run the business. On that sense, people will try to find their ways out. India has to become competitive in terms of their cost, and so that you can compete in the global environment. End of the day, let's say this pandemic, let's say go there for 12 to 18 months and down the line. But so we have to see those parts, where is the inefficiencies and how do we remove those inefficiencies out of the system. So that is very important. One is pure emotions. Yes, we have to go local. Along with those emotions, we have to put our mind behind it, that how do we compete inside ourselves in the at the marketplace. Other thing is basic research also. I think one is make in India, other is assemble in India. So how do we make sure that the important raw materials or the critical components are produced in India? Right now also I say ki we are more assemble in India in many sense, and then make in India. So, or manufacture in India. So that difference also we have to reduce over a period of time, that the critical component parts, let's say if I talk about air conditioners, whether the compressors can be made in India of the scale at which we need the production. So something of that sort also need to be seen along with it. But definitely as a mindset, more and more, I think the change will come towards the localization. And but again, with the sense of risk assessment, let's say if the pandemic is right now more in India, less in China, is it really the sense that you can actually procure from China and produce? That's the other way to see it, if you do keep on doing local. So those are the questions I think business will always ask in terms of when you are answering those questions.
Right. Mr. Thakkar, how do you think, are Indian SMEs ready to take this leap when, you know, the larger organizations wants to procure their raw materials from the Indian companies?
Okay, Swati, we have got lucky on this front. We being entrepreneurs, honestly, we support our fellow entrepreneurs, and most of our raw materials are made in India and made in India. So we are the proponents of Make in India since a long time. Today, even when we look at a new plant, the machinery what we source is an Indian machinery. Fortunately, our raw materials, 80% of our raw materials, including indigenous products, which are our key raw material like dolomite, is from India. So fortunately, we've been lucky on this front. And going forward, we will look at more and more backward integration in terms of chemicals, which we are currently importing. So we've been mulling over, deep diving into a lot of analytics of can we produce these chemicals which we are importing in a large scale from other nations, you know, predominantly nations like China. So we are already working in our research department of looking at a detailed backward integration, which is for us a way forward. And after this pandemic, we are definitely going to change gears. That's where we are, Swati.
Right. Professor Jayaraman?
Okay, I've heard the gentleman from the industry. I just want to bring in a little different perspective. So, what Senthil spoke about and what Vipul spoke about, basically buying Indian, making Indian, and so on. And what finally Milan spoke about, that is pretty interesting. He's now talking about Indian R&D and trying to do something and making new products and so on. Now, let me put this in perspective. What did the Prime Minister mean when he said localize? Be local and be vocal about local. Yeah. I did not think that he meant, you know, India should isolate itself. He did not mean that we should start doing everything only by Indian. I don't think he meant that. What he meant was that as of now, this is just my view, maybe someone may take an objection to this. As of now, the mass of the MSME sector has been exporting primarily on the basis of cost arbitrage. Because they are less expensive, simply because the Indian rupee is 70 to the dollar, and then we have, yeah,
100% true. Yeah,
that is one perspective. Second is that Indian quality is not truly spoken of well. I mean, that's a problem that we need to address. I know for a fact that the TVS Group in 1980s, Tata Steel in 1987, and then subsequently Mahindras and Birlas, and they've all done a whole lot of work in this area. But I think much of India still really needs to do a lot in quality. What the Prime Minister meant was, let's have Indian quality. For example, we need more of Aryabhattas and we need more of Dhanvantaris. These were the original innovators, and these guys were, they were doing, unfortunately in India, as Senthil said, we don't have, suppose I want to talk about electricity or something, I have to talk about Edison. Anything I want to talk about, I want to talk about phone, Alexander Graham Bell, engine, James Watt. We have no Indian role model who stands for quality, who stands for doing, and those who were, they were all unfortunately 1,000 years back, and their histories are gone. So I think what the Prime Minister is meaning is, let's now, this same situation prevailed in Japan in 1950. In Japan, when Dr. Deming went there, Japan was called yellow quality. Their quality was so poor that they just couldn't sell. So he went there, and mind you, from 1950 onwards, what the Japanese did was reinvent themselves. Exactly what the Prime Minister is saying. They reinvented. They went local with a vengeance. Now, what do you mean by local? Local means train your people, start thinking big, start thinking high quality, start thinking how to use the latest technologies and so on, how to develop, how to do R&D in your place and not keep borrowing everything. So what, to me, what localization means is develop Indian industry to the highest standards of quality. If that means importing something, go ahead, do it. If that means getting FDI from somewhere, go ahead and do it. But the leadership must come from the Indian industry. We need, as I said, Aryabhatta and others who will think about the various aspects of what needs to be done, and leadership should come. And what does that mean? Principally, stop depending on cost arbitrage. Start depending on making sure that the products that you produce are produced at the costs which are reasonable, but don't tout cost. Talk about quality. Talk about this is the best thing. And if the best quality costs 1 paisa more, fine, it's okay. And that is what is going to improve the quality of living standards of Indians. Otherwise, we will just be using the same chatas and same blessed roads. The roads are a disaster in India. When will we ever start? I know of coal, for example. Coal for the power industry consists, hope nobody is from Coal India around. It consists more of ash than coal. It contains 57% ash. So actually, when you're transporting coal, you're transporting ash, which is of no use to anybody. Okay. So this, in my view, is the localization, and I hope that the Indian industry will realize that. Don't talk about isolating. Don't talk about we don't like foreign people. It's not about imports. It's not about imports at all. It's about making use and getting a India, and that is what he said about being vocal about local. When will we start talking with pride? Like I'm saying, SP Jain, we have done a fantastic job in terms of addressing the COVID requirements. And we have done it on our own. We didn't go to America to borrow anything. And whatever technology, we just looked at the technology and got it done. So I think that is what the Prime Minister is doing.
Swati, you're on.
Yeah. Sorry. Mr. Senthil, I would like to come to you now. How do you look at Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative?
There are several...
Supply chain perspective, I'm saying.
Sorry?
From the supply chain perspective.
As Mr. Professor was saying, so Prime Minister, during this recent speech, I used the word supply chain several times, which by itself says or emphasizes the need of having a robust supply chain. And the other key point we talked about is a vocal for local product. We already covered about that point. So we need to start looking at it. So it is just a seed, as I was mentioning earlier. So we should have a long-term perspective on building that. We should create a big roadmap across all the sectors and what is needed for us to be a local champion and making making a global product. So this should be a start point, and we should keep evolving around it. And by industry sector, we need to identify what is the current gap within India and what needs to be done to address it, whether it is on the education field or it is in the manufacturing sector. Specific to the sectors, I think we need to have a specific long-term goal and vision to achieve this. And with respect to all the other benefits that the government is talking about on subsidies and other financing options, all that it is trying to bring in more liquidity, which will help the economy moving forward. So I think it's a welcome move, and we should wait and watch and see how it is going to reflect on our day-to-day activities and how things turn around coming out of this COVID.
Okay. Mr. Thakkar, you in the one of your answers spoke about automating your material
Plants.
handling process.
Yeah.
So, does it have any impact of the current pandemic situation, or you had this from on your mind from?
No, so we've been doing this. We've already started a couple of pilot plants, which is automating a lot of things, which is the intervention are more automated. And so, for after this pandemic, we are going to change our gears. So we are looking at backward integration of chemicals, which is what we currently import. That's what I wanted to share. But the process, the efficiencies have increased at our plants. Of course, the human intervention also has decreased to a particular level because of efficiencies. Yeah, so that's really helping us. So now we're going to really speed up and replicate the same model and at all across. And fortunately, the supply chain aspect, when I were to put in, we have across India, we have about 22 plants. So we've thought about supply chain. Whenever we create a plant facility, the second most expensive cost is after our goods is the supply chain. That's the second most expensive cost. So whenever we strategically look at the location of our plants, we look at the supply chain aspect, which is a very, very critical aspect for our business. Because we are in the business of, wall putty and other building material products, which look at, it's highly commoditized. So the transformation in supply chain is going to be the second cutting advantage. So any company which is looking at cost optimization will have to look at supply chain, which we've thought through from the last more than a decade, which has worked for us, Swati.
Right.
Adding to Thakkar, I would like to add
Please.
some points on this area. So when we talk about Industry 4.0 or technology adoption, people think these are big jargons, but not so. Actually, Internet of Things is something that is there with us for quite some time as an individual use or for our personal use. Let it be a smartwatch that we use or a connected device that we have. So these are all IoTs, and adapting these low-cost sensors in an industrial environment really helps us come out of some nagging issues. Otherwise it doesn't get noticed in the past. So I think that's the way forward. And even in our organization, we took digital transformation as a key for our supply chain. Right from the manufacturing, we have digitized most of our checklist forms. We have lots of IoT sensors that has been built in to help us give real-time insights on what's happening. Gone are the days where we do post-facto analysis, not to demean the TPM points, but it is all root cause corrective actions of improving your efficiency in yields. But after an impact has happened, but when you wanted to get to the next level, it is about how you monitor things real time, how you act on it immediately, so that you address that smaller percentage which normally we tend to miss. And it is not just in manufacturing, even the logistics industry now, connected trucks have become a new norm, and having a control tower with all the information flowing in, managing our fleet more efficiently and effectively, it plays a key role. Warehouse automations, again, so that's again a key for having our inventories on accurate every time. On the click of a button, we need to know what is available with the first in, first out, or the first expiry, first out. All those things should be built in. On the transactional processes, while we are still looking at RPAs, adapting to RPAs, things are now changing. So we are now getting into hyper intelligent automation, which is the next step of RPA, like adding machine learning and artificial intelligence into the processing transactional activities. When we have standardized data sets and routines, we use RPA, but when things are not so standard and we need to do some processing, there are technology now available and industries are adapting to it. And that is going to be new now. which will help us managing all this sort of pandemics, and people will be able to get a complete view of their supply chain sitting in their home on their mobile, and that's going to be the future.
Senthil, do you think the budget reallocation will happen towards digital this year for you as well?
Yeah, true. That's a big challenge that's going to be. Every budget allocation is going to come with a return on investment. So where I should invest now, the priority depends on what I'm serving to. So obviously there's going to be challenge, but the cost on these things are not really high, and the return of investment on these investments are not so exorbitant like it used to be in the past.
Wonderful,
I think it is a strategy call rather than a commercial call that we need to take here.
Yeah.
Mr. Agarwal, what is your perspective on digitalization of supply chain and logistics, also warehousing?
Right. So I'll start with let's say Havells first. I think the whole order to cash cycle, and I'll say let's supply chain is order to delivery and then delivery to cash cycle, at Havells is almost digitized. So when I say digitize in terms of the,
I think his network is poor.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Agarwal, it's breaking a bit.
Breaking up, sir.
So shall I start again? So let me just try to start again. So I'm saying at Havells, the whole order to delivery cycle or whole order to cash cycle is digitized more or less, and in terms of all the processes which sets in, right from the dealer who has to put the order on the portal itself, not somebody is taking the orders on phone or mails, and then auto billing happening, stock getting auto allocated, it goes to a warehouse where there is a WMS system in place, warehouse management system. So you get the visibility whether your orders got picked or not. It goes into a transportation where there is a TMS, transportation management system. It reaches the customer where he does EPOD, electronic POD. Once he does the EPOD and he finds a gap in the delivery, there is a ticketing system. Automatically that EPOD raises a ticket in the system, and then the ticket need to be closed. So the whole system is people independent. It's not dependent on the people, and the customer can directly talk to the company. If there is an issue with the issue a dealer has faced, so he can raise a ticket of its own by just confirming the delivery, and the visibility of shipments is almost real time. So I'll just give you an example. When the lockdown happened, we had more than 500 trucks on the road. At that point in time, we have more than 10,000 shipments which have to be delivered. We have more than 200 crores of inventory which was on the road. It's as good as cash on the road, and I'll say we were able to track it, with all these digitization in place, all this visibility in place, we were able to track it. Now the big challenge again which I see, because as you know right now we are into red, green, and these orange zone. So there are vendors who are in red zone, there are plants who are in green zone, then there are customers who are again in red zone. How do you map all of this together? What can be supplied, what cannot be supplied, what can be produced, what cannot be produced, what raw material can come in, what raw material cannot come in, how you plan your production, especially all the products where we have huge bill of material. Let's say if I produce a fan, if I have 200 components, those 200 components has to come in one way or the other, whether all those vendors are in the right place. It's a huge digitization and automation exercise that how do I see all this? Like I see right now on the Zoom, the windows, I can see different windows. I can say, okay, this is what I can do, this I can't do. I'll say it's not easy, easier said than done. And in terms of whether we are creating an elephant or break the elephant into pieces and then try to solve the problem. So, but it is there, and it is there to see for it. And we are seeing it on a daily basis. The dealer rejects an order, he has gone into quarantine. Now we have, by a huge effort, we have shipped the product. Suddenly that guy has gone into quarantine. Now what to do with that shipment? Whether to deliver that, or how you deliver that shipment, because that guy himself is not there for next 21 days, right? So those kind of challenges are going to be there in terms of, because this zonal things and all this is not going to go away, even though lockdown is going to get eased out, but it is going to be quite some time.
Mr. Agarwal, you were not audible once again.
Is it better?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. It is going to be our way of life for quite some time. And companies who have smaller shipments to deliver, where there is a part truckload movements, I assume Hindustan Coca-Cola has more of a full truckload movements. Challenges are challenges are going to be even more. So let's say we have a SKU list of almost 15,000 SKUs. And when I see Havells India Limited, and that has to get delivered to the different customers pan India, almost 15,000 customers we have to deliver. So it is not an easy task in itself. It is going to bring lot many new learnings. So we have some learning of past, but same time I believe lot many. Let's say again I talk post GST. Lot of work was done on warehouse consolidation. So will the warehouse consolidation work in this environment, or is it better to have more shipping, more warehouses? At least you can serve that demand from the local warehouse. Let's say Mumbai is closed down, but can I serve Nagpur demand if I have a warehouse in Nagpur? Because up countries or rural is likely to be more open. Metros are going to be more, let's say, get open in a later stage. So how do I serve the rural or the upcountry demand versus the local demand? So other day I was talking, can we have a warehouse in, let's say, in West Bengal, somewhere in Siliguri, rather than in Kolkata? Because Kolkata will definitely keep on facing challenges. It might open for some time. Again, there can be few cases, and it can again go into some kind of a stoppage. So all those questions we are trying to answer. There are a lot of uncertainties on the planning side, also on the supply chain planning side, also lot of iterative planning has to happen, lot of scenario building, what if analysis. It is not pure that somebody has given the forecast, you take that forecast, you start producing, try planning things. You have to be on the ground, lot many cross functional work. Now all the people have to sit together in this kind of a meeting room setup, keep on talking about different constraints, challenges, and then try to come out with a workable plan, which will have some risk. You have, end of the day, you have to keep on taking some risk from the demand perspective and the supply perspective. But that is going to be there. It is not, even though organizations keep on saying that we don't want to do silo working, and that's how everybody want to work. But this situation will even force more. Let all the people sit together at one place and try to put things together in perspective. A production guy plans something, but RM is not there. Or if the RM, let's say procurement guy procures too much of RM, because other side there's a cost angle to it. And on the demand side, I feel there is a lot of work which will happen on the working capital reduction. Other day I was reading on the automobile side, the dealers want to reduce their inventory from almost 45 days to 15 days, car dealers. And that is totally true. And because the huge chunk of money or the working capital gets blocked just in the inventory, because there is a huge push sales. How do we come out of those push sales? Because now there is no need of push sales, right? Because we are starting from actually from zero.
From scratch, yes.
Yeah,
again,
yeah. So do we really need to push sales? Because you are never come out of that vicious circle of primary sales, secondary sales, tertiary sales. Is actually this is one of the right opportunity. Can we correct that circle at this point in time? Because all of that is inefficiency in the system. One way or the other, if you take out the value chain, if the dealer is carrying huge inventory, he will not pay you up. So his cash flow is blocked, your cash flow is blocked, one way or the other. So how we play that mind games, because all this is a lot of mind game. How do I keep control of my dealer, or dealer will say, okay, how do I keep check on the company, and how does those equation work out? So I think a lot of that equations will change because salesman today, the salesman can't go to the dealer shop. And
I can resonate with you on so many angles, so many pointers.
Right. So all of this we were keep on discussing from last 15, 20 days, how each bit of it has to be done. They are not definite clear answers, but directionally you keep on finding some ways out. Okay, this is the way we should do. This is the way we should do. So that's what that's how I'll put it.
Right. Thank you.
Can we take a couple of questions from the audience?
Yeah. Yes, Afif, please go ahead.
First of all, we have Mr. Sudhir Kadam, who's really appreciating every panelist, and he asked, can we use artificial intelligence for a proper planning for the disruption? He also says that, however, because of this challenging, however, can the industry come together to achieve this? If any of the panelists would like to answer either of.
I think Senthil should take this. Senthil.
artificial intelligence and machine learning are something that every industry should start tapping on. So it is a huge potential. So the point here or the issue currently I would see is like how are we identifying an opportunity or a business problem that can be solved using an artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence comes into right from your forecasting and improving your forecasting accuracy, considering various factors which normally traditionally we tend to miss. So in that way, it helps us in increasing our forecasting accuracy with respect to performing our routines, as I was talking earlier on the RPA. So it is not just simple standardized processes that can be automated. Now artificial intelligence can automate beyond what we anticipated in the past, and we can also use it in a process industry. For mine, I would say an example like we have multiple process parameters that control an output, and most of the times I check my output, understand what is the issue, and then go back and see what should be the process parameter to correct it. But now with machine learning and artificial intelligence, these things happen on a real time, so I will be able to see like, okay, my input process is deviating from the most idealistic solution or a situation, so this is the action I need to take. So those are the areas that we can imply artificial intelligence and machine learning. It is about us to define our business problem, and there is a solution readily available outside. So it is about we exploring it, and it is their part of the industry now. And as you as the participant was asking, like, it is about collaboration. I think we need more amount of collaboration between the industries that provide these solutions to the industries that need these solutions.
Right.
And I think ITP will play a major role in bridging this gap.
Yeah. Along with all the panelists, I'm sure our role is to have this platform. We would like to take another question, which is from the Aruna Patra. She says that what will be the key changes post-COVID situation related to manufacturing? 1, warehousing. 2, logistic management. 3rd, how organizations should plan and react in terms of technology and operational practices.
I think that's very, very important question.
Yeah, okay, let me try and see if I can get into this. We just had a nice exposition of what technology can do. I would just like to add some dimensions to it. When you look up in the past, when such interventions have come, the first industrial revolution, one was around 1800, then second was around 1920 when Ford brought in the assembly line, and 1960 or so when we got the IT. These are the 3 industrial revolutions that have gone. The 4th one is what is we keep talking about as the Industry 4.0. Now there was a talk about artificial intelligence and so on. My thinking is that artificial intelligence in Indian industry may take a little while, but there are other things like what, for example, Mr. Agarwal is talking about 15,000 SKUs and silos and so on. If you want to manage all this, we need big data. The Indian industry must start, and that is where I link Prime Minister Modi's idea of localization with the improved Indian quality. The productivity is the primary concern. In all these 3 industrial revolutions, they became required because the productivity was tending to go very low. And the investments people would make would not pay off because the productivity was not going. And we have reached a similar stage now where we are saying we need to push productivity up. And that is what I think all applications of new Industry 4.0 must address increased productivity. And that is where Indian companies can play a very key role. And I think this will happen going forward. Big data, IoT, then batch size of 1, manufacturing batch size of 1. How do we address mass customization? This is, again, these are the new paradigms which have to come into the lexicon, in the business lexicon. Business companies must start talking about how can I make and be productive a batch of 1. Somebody wants a car which is of model 1 and somebody else wants a model 2 the same day and so on. How does a car company run 10 to 20 different models from the same line and still be profitable? Here you will find big data to begin with, IoT, and then later on as we move ahead, artificial intelligence and so on. These are the things that is going to be very useful.
So post-COVID scenario is what the question was. Can we?
Yeah, post-COVID, I will address the warehousing issue. Now, warehousing, will be the new profit center. Because there are two ways in which supply chain is going to evolve. One is what is called the responsive supply chain. The other is called the agile supply chain. These two have to happen. If these have to happen, then warehouses become far more significant. Currently, today warehouses are treated as points where things are stored and things are dispatched. No. What is going to happen is warehouse will become the key launch points for delivering on the strategic promise. The strategic promise is a responsive supply chain. What is a responsive supply chain? It is able to respond to the demand as and when it starts. Wherever it occurs, you need to respond to it quickly. And to do that, you must have responsive supply chain. And how is the warehouse going to change? Warehouse is going to become the new profit center. In terms of the retail industry, for example, we are going to see warehouses segmenting themselves. Is this a warehouse for the retail industry? Is this a warehouse for the steel industry? Is this a warehouse for some other industry? Now that way also there is going to be a segmentation in warehousing. Warehousing is going to look at some of the key things like using IoT, using artificial intelligence, how quickly and how well they can unload, how well they can store. And I think there is going to be a process called looping the loop, which means that more and more warehouses must find ways in which they can get the products in, keep looping it, don't store it. Keep moving it around and immediately send it out. Can you find such items and can you work on these things? The IoT and big data will help you do that. So I think going forward, warehouses are going to be additional, what I would even say COVID profit centers. And this profit center is because of the fact that they're going to play a very key role in the responsive supply chain. In terms of the agile supply chain, once again, the situation is quite similar, slightly different. Agile means 3-4 companies getting together to service market requirements. So when we do that, then will companies have collaborative warehouses? Now that is something which needs to be thought about, because companies are so competitive and they may not want to share data. But with the new era of IoT coming in, privacy is going to take a backseat. Competition is going to be on a different level. It may be in a different way to imagine competition. And therefore, more of collaborative, which I think C.K. Pralad talked about many years back, such type of manufacturing is going to be, I won't say the norm, but it will have to come.
Hafiz, do we have any other questions?
Yeah, in fact, we have many questions. In fact, people are especially thanking Vipul for elaborating such a nicely, the challenges, and he has a lot of one thing, wherein Varun Banka, he asked about, he has a couple of line of question, but I'm going to take a couple of them. How important is warehousing? What is already Mr. Jayaraman is already answered. The third, what he asked, is it recommended to invest in building a warehouse if land is available with all the basic amenity? And how suitable is Khopoli area? Lies between Mumbai and Pune. At the same time, it got excellent connectivity to the ports.
Can I take this? Can I take this up?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Okay, so build versus buy. In my perspective, you've got to build one today. It will not only help you to mobilize your inventory, but in the long run, it is actually, as professors mentioned, it's going to be a profit center. It is the right time to do it. And Khopoli being very centrally placed, we recently are putting a setup where we are backwardly integrating a sand plant to manufacture our plasters. And it's coming up very well. So to my mind, it's a good time. If you have the avenues in the long run, trust me, in the next 3 to 5 years window, if you make a detailed P&L, it is certainly going to be a profit center. My 2 bits, please.
Amazing. Hafiz, can we take one last question? Because we are short of time as well. Hafiz? I think Hafiz isn't I think there's some technical issue with Harish. Anyway, I would like to ask one last question to all the panelists, that what is the biggest learning as a supply chain professional to you and to your organization from this COVID and lockdown situation?
Yeah, so let me start. And, so I think there are many. First of all, it is not one. So,
There's a list.
yeah, so it can be as small as how you have drafted your agreements, and right. So in terms of your learning, but as good as how you take decisions and how fast you can take decisions with all the right trade-offs between cost, service, and risk mitigation. We have to be risk focused versus just cost focus. I think over a period of time, especially in India, supply chains are just cost focus, but have not mitigated enough for these kind of eventualities over a period of time. I think definitely GST has helped us in a way that you can do billing from any state to any state now, Hannah. So definitely
wonderful.
it's a big flexibility.
Blessing, yes.
Yeah, in this kind of an environment, otherwise there is an additional cost to that kind of impact. So in a way, so I think huge learnings make us think what we earlier used to do, let's say in 15 days time. Now today, despite being at home, we were able to do that in 24 hours time. And so actually you feel that you are in office, all of you are together, you can do it faster. Actually too many cooks spoil the food. And so so better be out. And let's say in this, even this webcast, you are focused, right? If you do the same thing in a hotel, people will be on tea, coffee, other thing. Now, right now, people are just focused on the webcast for 1 hour. I think there is a lot of benefits in terms of these kind of learnings. Earlier, we can never think that supply chain can never work from home. Right? Today, I can think. Other day, we are having a discussion that we have to just give the print command from my office, and the driver at a warehouse, even if there is a security guy and a driver, he should be able to take the print and go, rather than 5 people being there at the warehouse and to run all the operations of e-way bill and all that blah 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 exercises. However, all of this can be done remotely, and without, and now with social distancing in place, and that is going to be there. So how do we do all those things together? I think at Havells, we are in the right direction. We were in the right direction, which has helped us to sail through, be it in terms of automation, be it in terms of palletization, be it in terms of warehousing technologies, warehouse management system. That many companies will go for a warehouse management system, because today you don't know tomorrow that guy is going to come into the warehouse or not. Who will search the product in the warehouse if you don't have a warehouse management system? So, and how many people can search a product? So you need to have a technology in place, and it's a basic warehouse management system, but still that is not there in India. Many of the warehouses are still local, and I'm talking about best of the FMCG companies also. I'm not just talking about the small companies. Many of the best FMCG companies don't have warehouse management system because they never felt the need to, let's say, put that money, or it never came into their focus in their list of priorities as a management. But now when you see, it will make a lot of sense to go for it. And it is not about money. It is just about, let's say, because now like Mr. Modi talked about supply chain quite a lot, and not many people, I have got messages from my team, sir, our families are feeling proud that we are into supply chain function. So these kind of, these kind of things. So all those things, I think a lot of respect for supply chain will also come in. I think most of the time supply chain guys generally feel it is a thankless job. It's a little so I think those, and there are examples. The moment we serve the order, people have not got a thank you from last 2 years. Suddenly for serving 2 orders, they are giving 3 thank yous that you are able to serve the demand. So those kind of change, behavioral change will come. The way we respect our drivers, they are also the, let's say, COVID warriors one way or the other.
Absolutely. So, we have created a small incentive plan for them. If they deploy it well on time, they get an incentive. Something so they are, just to feel happy.
So they are drivers at the lower end of the strata. How do we, let's say, take care of our drivers in India? There is no respect. Actually, literally no respect for drivers in India. And so I think all of this is going to change, and we are facing a lot of difficulty. Today, the spot prices are as high as 40% higher.
Yes, very much.
Because the drivers are not there. Anna, you have trucks lying idle because the drivers has run back to their homes. You don't have people to drive the trucks, and the cost have gone up. And
yesterday, 44 trucks alert was there from Nhava Sheva on my phone. 44 trucks are lying idle, which will never be the case ever in Nhava Sheva for mobilizing goods.
So although these are learnings, I'll say in one way or the other, Anna, I don't know whether I put it very articulately or this thing, but because a lot of passion comes in with all this. So right.
Yeah. So before I go to Mr. Senthil Kumar, just give us a moment to launch a poll for audience. We have a couple of questions. Can we have the first question? And okay, Mr. Senthil Kumar, why don't you continue till the time audience votes?
Okay. So adding to what Vipul had said, like we as an organization also understood, or even we did not even foresee that a situation like this will happen, but we were preparing ourselves with lots of automation in place, right? So in fact, even before this pandemic, we had a scheme of having a dedicated insurance, trip-based insurance for our drivers. So to just make them more comfortable or give them their additional perk for them to come and drive a track with for our company. So now it become easy for us to expand that coverage to cover COVID as well. So in that way, that is one of the steps I would say helped us be on the task force during this situation. We had did some innovation on our trucks. So we had hydraulic back end doors. So in that way, the pallet can be brought down to the floor without even use of any manpower requirement. And as Vipul was saying about palletization, yes, we took that as an strategy call long time back, and we are migrating from manual shipments to palletized shipments, which will, though, as going to have a short-term impact on our loadability and the loss on the freight, but eventually it has got lots of intangible benefits. So investing on these areas slowly and steadily as a strategic call will help us gear up for any sort of pandemic. And not just that, but this pandemic again has got their own learnings. Now we are revisiting our job profiles and which are the job that needs to be on the floor and which can be taken completely from an remote environment. Work from home is going to be a new norm, and functions are going to be identified, like which all the functions can perform their job duties working from home more effectively and efficiently. So those are the changes that is going to get addressed across all the industries. And I think slow and steady, every industry is adapting to new ways of working, inventing new ways of working, making some new collaborations which were never thought of, shared warehouse, collaborative warehouse, as Professor Jairam was talking. So that is going to be a new norm. So to be most cost effective, unless we get to that stage, we will not be able to serve that last mile delivery. Having multiple people doing a delivery to a small location doesn't make sense. We should collaborate and get there. So I think those are the areas I think this pandemic is going to force us to get to, which will make us more efficient.
Okay. Mr. Thakkar? Mr. Thakkar? Okay, meanwhile, I go to Professor Jairaman, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Professor, if you can let us know what has been your biggest learning in terms of COVID and lockdown situation as a supply chain professional.
Yeah, I see the following. Number one, there is something called horizon planning and strategic planning. Earlier, the strategic plans used to be developed for normally 10 years or so. Now that has to become only 5 years. You must start preparing for cataclysmic change every 5 years. This was not being planned at all, and we just deal with it. Second, I would think going forward, companies are going to establish what I just now call as corona buffers. But this is something kind of a corona fund. Because suddenly when something like this happens, companies, MSMEs are completely cashless. There is no money, nothing. So can you create this kind of a fund in anticipation? Third, resilience. Resilience is one of the biggest learnings. So we need not low-cost supply chains. What we need is resilient
Professor Jairaman, if you can excuse me for a minute, I think we have a feedback from audience that your voice is a little low. So if you can take your mic a little closer.
Okay. Can they hear me now?
I think so. It's better.
Okay. Now, one of the things, the third thing is the resilience. A resilient supply chain is what is going to be in the future. Now, what do we mean by a resilient chain? Resilient chain is if one supplier is down, the other will come in and so on. And sort of, I would say, less value addition at each center. So this is a little bit of a complex topic. I don't want to get into it just now. But what I just would say is, resilient supply chain will make us go back to the age when companies used to have multiple suppliers. In the past, for example, General Motors, Ford and all used to have many suppliers. But their idea was, I will have many suppliers, I will play one against the other and get the least cost. Now that is going to change. It is not going to be a least cost supply chain, but it will be a very highly resilient supply chain. So this is another learning from that. The last thing that I would like to talk about is globalization. Now, when you look at globalization, a lot of people have, since they have many businesses are globalized, they have developed global chains. Unfortunately, when we did talk about when this globalization happened, many companies went and depended on one country like China. They went and depended on it, and unfortunately, that has become a very big issue. So in future, what I would think is, you need to make sure that there is some sort of a, and why did people go to China? Because it's low cost. Why are people going to Vietnam? Low cost. Now please stop this low cost business. Get to high quality, get to the cost resilience equation. That is the new equation that is going to be in, and make this equation drive your supply chain, which means that, for example, you link it to localization, what the Prime Minister said, start buying more raw materials, more unprocessed goods from abroad, maybe if required, but do the processing value addition in India. That is exactly the thing that we need to do. And if we do that, we would have built more resilient supply chain.
Right. Thank you, Professor. Mr. Thakkar, I would like to come to you for the closing statement on, what has been your biggest learning in this pandemic situation as a supply chain professional?
Okay, Swami, thank you. It's been enlightening for me as well. It's very, very intriguing. Okay, for my view, honestly, there will be forward times which will predominantly be new approach in terms of make-to-order strategies. Somebody like a Vipul who has 15,000 SKUs, there will be the next phase where we will talk about make-to-order and not have very large inventories. Now, optimization will be the way forward. The way we plan our entire supply chain, starting from procurement to delivery, will change. Automation definitely will play a great role in optimizing this. However, the transitioning from a typical ERP, which we currently do, to a AI or a machine learning, which Senthil was mentioning, is still a far-fetched journey for us, for anybody in this space at this point in time. Because to invest, look at larger working capital. So I think the supply chain will definitely be a transition. And as rightfully said, a lot of respect for the supply chain professionals has come in, and it will be much more in course of time. And this is going to completely transform, and this is going to be a great expertise, a great skill, and in demand. So I think a way forward for supply chain and optimization of any product at this point in time, given the external scenario, we will need to optimize and create a very, very robust supply chain.
Okay. Swati. Thank you so much, Mr. Thakkar, and thank you to each of the panelists that you took the time out of your busy schedule, even when you're working from home.
Oh, it's more work, I guess, from home.
To join this session. Thank you so much. Okay, before we close, just again, couple of things. All of you will get a thank you email from us, which will have a small survey. Please do participate in that survey. Also, this webinar recording will be available on Manufacturing Today's website to view it later, or in case you, if your colleague must be wanting to view it later. It will take us 1 or 2 days time to upload it, but it will surely be there on our website. So stay tuned. We will have more webinars. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much, Vipul, Senthil, Professor.
Thanks,
wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good day.
A lot of learning.